Hi, I'm Raymond Kresha, and welcome to a video about the history of the Kresha family in America and a look at the homeland in the old country, the place where the Kresha family lived for perhaps 600 years. We'll look at why they came and where they wound up. Then we'll take a look in depth at the little village of 763 people as it exists today. The first Kreshas immigrated from Moravia, what is now part of Czechia. They first started coming in 1885 with the arrival of Theodore Jr., then four more in 1888, and the last Kresha, Joseph Franz, arriving in 1890. Back then, Moravia was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, headquartered in Vienna, Austria. When the Kreshas arrived, they told the immigration folks that they were from Austria. They did speak German, so there was not much confusion. The emperor at the time was Franz Joseph, who reigned for 64 years until the beginning of World War I. In fact, it was the assassination of Franz Joseph's hand-picked successor, the Archduke Ferdinand, that triggered the World War and many, many changes. The Kreshas were German speakers and lived in what was called the Sudetenland area of Czechoslovakia. It presently is in the northeastern part of Czechia. Our records indicate the Kreshas came from Hradec, sometimes Graz, Austria. Others mention Hradečná or Markersdorf. These two nearby communities had two names over time, one in German and the other Czech. Graz and Markersdorf are German, and Hradec and Hradečná are Czech. They are in Moravia, which was owned by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, headquartered in Vienna, Austria. That is why many immigrants from this area said they were from Austria. That was true in the late 1800s, but today it is Czechia, not Austria. The area has had four different names in the past 100 years. First it was Austria, then it was Czechoslovakia, then the Czech Republic, and now Czechia. Mary and I visited Nová Hradečná in November of 2015, taking the train from Prague to Olomouc. We had a nice visit with some English-speaking Czechians. She works for Amazon, and he is an environmental forester. We were met in Olomouc by our guide, Martin Petra, who drove us around to Nová Hradečná. We started at the city municipal hall to visit with the mayor, Tomáš Müller, where we checked in to make sure that we had the right house identified where the Kresha family lived for all these years. We were treated very kindly, including being given some items from local businesses. We enjoyed seeing the old maps with the old names that we talked about. It proved definitively that we were at the right place, and in fact, the Kresha name can be found in a few of the old records there in Nová Hradečná. What severely complicates the matter is that two things happened after our ancestors immigrated, World War I and II. Austria no longer had Moravia, and this area became a part of Czechoslovakia. After World War II, nearly all German-speaking peoples, including the remaining Kreshas, were expelled to Germany. They were taken to the recently vacated concentration camp in Dachau near Munich, where it had been turned into a refugee camp. After the ethnic cleansing, the vacated homes in Nová Hradečná were resettled, remodeled, and new homes built, and often the numbering system got changed accordingly. The house number 33 of today is not the house number 33 of the 1800s. This is the site where the old house number 33 was, and as you can tell, it has been remodeled and is modern and is now house number 163. The Kreshas lived on this site for 142 years. An unknown Czech family lives there now and has been for over 65 years. There is a nearby chapel just a stone's throw away from this house that the Kreshas would have prayed at and said rosaries.
Good view, right?
She told me that about the old organ was 2,700,000 of Czech crowns.
Wow. Yes.
It looks old. She doesn't know exactly how.
Tady byla původní malba, byla takový ty zvonečky, ty nebesa, hvězdičky, ale protože to už bylo hodně jako za své, tak se to malovalo, tak toto je vymalované asi v roce. Ta křížová cesta není původní, tu původní.
Almost old is original here, but the flower is not original. Painted it was in 1970s. The statues of cross are not original, but newer one. But all of you can see is original. The poppy, the altar, the statues, the baptistry. So at the baptistry were baptized your ancestors. Baptism.
Yeah.
Touch it.
Yeah. That would be where
Your
ancestors were baptized.
Tak tady byla taková říš, jenomže při té rekonstrukci se
Our guide has been telling us about them. And they also originated the Cyrillic alphabet.
Ano, když přišli, ale jako už bylo výročí.
There are no Kresha graves in the cemetery, as the custom was for families to pay rent for plots each year. If there is no one left to pay the rent, the graves are exhumed and relocated to a mass grave somewhere else. Since the Kreshas were expelled, there was no one left to pay. However, Adolf Franz Kresha married a girl from the area, Sophia Kropatsch, and there are many, many Kropatches left in Nová Hradečná, nearby Trubelis and Lasse, all of whom come to St. Lawrence's.
Dříve než nám klesnou víčka těsně před spaním, uvidíme večerníčka, jak se uklání. Pokud vám není moc, dobrý večer, dobrou noc zamává čepičkou z kouzelných hromádek, hází lístky pohádek maličkou ručičkou.
We then traveled to Trubelis, a couple of miles away. There we visited the city hall, where we were able to find and examine birth records of Sophia Kropatsch's older siblings in Trubelis. Remember, this is the Sophia that married Adolf Franz Kresha in Polk County and had 10 children, the so-called first family. Several generations of Kropatches and Kreshas are from this area, now known for its chocolate. This area right here is where they were reputed to have lived. We had supper in a little Moravian restaurant in Strelis nearby, where some great-grandparents actually lived at the time of the American Revolution. It is called the Pension Kolchi, or in English, the Pheasant Inn. You can stay overnight. We had a traditional dinner of potato pancakes and pheasant stew before moving on to Sumwald. We made a late stop in Sumwald, where other relatives have lived. We met some folks who actually remembered Karl Riedel, who married the daughter of Adolf Franz Kresha's sister Aloysia and ran a hotel for a while there. The church there is beautiful, and it is where the Riedels were married in 1921. The Riedels' daughter Helga eventually married an American GI after World War II, now with many descendants in the United States. We spent the night at a Best Western motel in Olomouc. It was out in the country a bit, and the food was hot for breakfast. It wasn't too long, and we got back on the road. One of our first stops was the castle at Usov, which was owned by the Liechtenstein family at the time of the Kreshas' farming of the land. The lord of the castle ruled with an iron fist, collecting taxes and enforcing rent and obligatory labor on castle lands. For many, many years, the Kreshas and others were treated as peasants or slaves. Things got better after the American Revolution shook up the old order, and common people realized that they could influence change for the better. We visited the tiny village of Piskov, where a triple great-grandmother once lived. It appears that a descendant still lives there, but they were not at home. Karl Riedel, whom we mentioned earlier, grew up in this small community of Brevenik. Karl grew up in this relatively nice home, and we got to meet the current residents briefly. This was the home of Aloysia and her husband Joseph Weixley for a while, and 4 daughters were born there. This was Joseph and Aloysia's old home around 1900, and it was occupied by somebody, but no one was home except the family dog. The family church was not far away, including reminders that the Rydals had been there and been important in the life of the church. The little village of Nova Hradečná was the home of Cecilia Parakovsky Kresha, the mother of all 5 Kreshas who came to the United States. The home is large and spacious, and the Parakovskys have lived there since the late 1700s. It is only 4 or 5 miles from Nová Hradečná, and the weather was gorgeous on the day we visited. It was a perfect place, with a small chapel nearby. The tiny village, is now part of Unikov. Very important to Nová Hradečná and all of these communities is the 600-meter-high rocky promontory, or small mountain to the northwest, important for hunting and wood for building or firewood. Bradlow is a remnant of the virgin forest that was once covering the entire area. These days, Bradlow is more for recreation. This is a map to give you some perspective of the Kresha homeland. You can see the Castle Yusuf in the west in a square, while all the lands that belong to it are pretty much to the east of it underlined. From the top is Brevenek, Nová Hradečná, Sumwald, Piskov, Trubelis, Lasse, Nova Hradečná, Ujezd, and southwest of Unikov, Strelis. Nearly all of our ancestors came from this small 10 to 12 mile square area of northern Moravia. The area is definitely agricultural. After 1884, the Kresha family moved east, presumably to follow their older daughter Cecilia, who had married and moved east to Rejoviste. In the next several years, 5 of the children immigrated to America. Now we'll show you what happened to the ones who left Moravia, with modern pictures of Nová Hradečná in the background. These are thanks to a video by Dominic and John Polach of Nová Hradečná with the help of the Nová Hradečná mayor, Tomáš Müller. It was 1888 that the formal picture was taken while the family left in Jurikov, and 4 of the children headed to America. They would meet their older brother Theodore, the oldest boy, who immigrated in 1885. He arrived in Merrick County, Nebraska, and worked as a blacksmith for area farmers. Life did not go well for him, as he was thought insane and was institutionalized several times in Nebraska before winding up in New York State in treatment for alcoholism. Cecilia Kressa worked hard at a factory to earn extra money to send her younger boys to America, taking the train from Nová Hradečná to work in a factory in Unikov. The 2 older daughters, Cecilia and Aloysia, did not want to go. 3 years later, in 1888, Amalia, 20, her son Louis, less than a year old, Anna, 17, and Adolf Franz, 15, went to the immigration agent to get birth certificates, passports, and transportation arrangements to America. They took the train from Jurikov, Moravia, to Hamburg, Germany, where they boarded the Weiland immigration ship with passage to New York City. They left August 31st, 1888, and were on the Atlantic for 8 days at a cost of $37.50. There was one huge storm while they were traveling. The 4 arrived on the early morning of September 8th and had to undergo a physical checkup on Bradlow Island and a 2-week quarantine to make sure that they were healthy. On the 22nd of September, they took the train west from New York to Columbus, Nebraska on the Union Pacific Main Line, where their older brother Theodore met them and took them to their places of employment. Amalia and her infant son joined her husband Adolf Kuhnel on a farm near Schuyler, east of Nebraska. 17-year-old Anna had a job with the Anton Bitt family in Columbus, Nebraska. She didn't like the way she was treated by the Bitts and soon married a widower farmer, Martin Cargus, a year or two later. Adolf Franz went to work for a farmer in Platte County, Johann Schramm, for the fall. Then in the winter, worked for the John Scholes family in the Valley Precinct in Polk County. 6 years later, he married a Czech girl from a nearby community village in Moravia, that is Lasse, where they had the same church parish. Her name, Sofia Kropatch. He was 20, she 18. The youngest Kresha, Joseph Franz, arrived in 1890 and was employed by farmers in the Silver Creek area of Merritt County, not far from the farms where his sisters Anna Cargus and Amalia Kuhnel lived. Joseph worked for many years, finally marrying Laura Reed of Silver Creek when he was 24 years old. Theodore and Cecilia attempted immigration, arriving with Joseph Franz in 1890, but they returned to Jurikow after they thought Nebraska was too hot. 2 years later, Cecilia Perakowski Kresha died of a broken heart and stomach cancer in Jurikow, Moravia, at the age of 55. Theodore moved back to Nová Hradečná and eventually remarried. Aloysia, who had a hard time adjusting to leaving and then coming back, had a child out of wedlock, but then settled down with the farmer Joseph Weixler of Brevenik. One of her daughters with Joseph married a local man, Carl Riedel, and is one of the descendants that settled in Florida. I hope you have enjoyed this recap of the research that my great aunt Lillian Kresha did, along with paid research and a visit to the old homeland. A lot of history has been uncovered, and much of it is now on Ancestry.com with the extended Kresha family tree. If you love to garden, you can thank the many generations of farmers in your history back to at least the 1200s in northern Moravia, Czechia.